Let me go back to these new revelations about the curfew imposed by Victorian Labor Premier Daniel Andrews back in 2020. Here's what he did to his state at the time.
There will be a curfew across metropolitan Melbourne from 8 p.m. this evening, and it will run from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. each and every day. We can no longer have people simply out and about for no good reason whatsoever. These steps are the ones we have to take. These are the decisions I've made, because anything short of this will not keep us safe.
Now, this is in the news again now because emails from that period have turned up that show beyond a shadow of doubt that this was not a decision taken on medical advice. The Chief Medical Officer himself said that this was a decision taken outside of medical advice by the Labor Premier at the time, Daniel Andrews. Joining me in the studio now is Liberal Senator for South Australia, Alex Antic. Good to talk to you again, Alex. What I highlighted at the top of the program, I showed clips from me a month later, and we were saying on this show, it was clear from some of the comments at the time that this was not taken on medical advice, which just goes to the point. It's still a story now. It's great that we're examining it and looking at the emails, but it goes to the way that we just didn't have enough scrutiny at the time from enough people.
Yeah, well, I think you're exactly right on that. And, it would be probably a little bit cute to say that everything that happened during COVID needs to have some degree of cynicism put over the top of it. But I can tell you here in South Australia, in 2022, I had a Freedom of Information application returned in very similar terms, where I'd asked for all the health advice that SA Health here had relied on in order to do the mask mandates and the vaccine mandates. And I got effectively a pile about that high of minutes of meetings where people were just discussing things. So I think it's clear that a lot of this was just made up on the run. And we saw that with some of the ludicrous stuff. It wasn't just the lockdowns. It was the manner in which people were being curtailed when they went into a building. If you remember here in South Australia, you walk into a gym, you had to have a mask on, but if you did a spin class, you could take your mask off, but you had to be a metre away from it. This was all being made up. I think a lot of this was completely devoid of scientific merit, and I'm glad people are still asking the questions. I certainly am, and I'll continue to do so. Yeah,
they should keep doing so, because the trouble is the politicians kept telling us they referred to medical advice to justify all their decisions, never shared that medical advice, and now more of this detail is coming out. Another example is in Queensland, where that state's chief health officer, now the governor up there, effectively admitted that shutting down schools wasn't a health measure. It was more about sending a message to the community about how serious this was.
Yeah, look, there's been a bit of I think a global awakening on some of this. We saw just this week that the White House actually released a lab leak report, which really got to the heart of some of the things that were conspiracy theories 3 or 4 years ago. COVID.gov is the address of that if people want to go and have a look. It's pretty extraordinary stuff. It talks about the myth of using masks. It talks about the origin of the virus. So, look, I think we were basically spoon-fed a lot of nonsense during this period. That's why we need a Royal Commission.
Will we get one, though? As the time passed, can you see your own side of politics ever stumping up and having one?
Well, certainly I will continue to try. I'll continue to push for that. And the reason for that is I know people want this to go away. It's either a bad memory or it's a politically inconvenient fact. But the reality is every single day I still have people talking to me about a vaccine injury or the destroyed business or just the trauma. I mean, we still have an excess death rate in this country, about 13% over the 5-year baseline. These questions have to be answered.
All right, we were just talking to Sophie Ellsworth from London about the fallout from this UK Supreme Court decision defining what a woman is. Surprise, surprise, a woman is biologically a woman. The fallout there has been extraordinary. But I want to show you what Peter Dutton said last week when he was asked about this on the campaign trail. Have a look.
In light of this ruling, what is your definition of a woman?
Well, that's a matter, obviously, that's been before the British courts. I haven't seen the detail of the case, and it's not something that I think is front of minds at this election, I think.
Now, Alex Antic, we understand it's the cost of living. You want to keep the election campaign focused on the big issues. No, don't want to have culture wars on the side. But this is a fundamental issue, surely, where the coalition should be firmly standing on the side of science.
Look, I mean, I understand that, but I think we have to accept that there are a lot of moving parts to an election campaign. The number one overwhelming priority for people, though, is cost of living, and we see that people are doing it very tough. We've got interest rates on the rise. People's mortgages are up $50,000 they've spent over the last 3 years under this Labor government. We haven't got the energy bill relief that we're looking for. Look, this is an issue that I've been dealing with for a long period of time. I've said it openly. My personal view is that there should be an amendment to the Sex Discrimination Act to return the definition of man and woman, and that would solve the problem. But look, I totally understand why Peter Dutton's focusing on the big issues. This wouldn't, I think, even though it is a very important issue, something that I've taken very seriously, wouldn't appear in the top 10 issues for Australians at the moment.
Thanks for joining us, Alex.
Thanks,
I appreciate
Chris.
it.
Good on you.
Alex Antic, Liberal Senator for South Australia.